Okay, let's see my solution. So, well, the first thing, well, create the dictionary again. Well, remember now, even if we don't want to change any of the code here, and the first thing you want to remember is you want to do the indentation. Okay, so similar to you guys, I also grab the whole chunk of the code, copy, and then do a paste here. And the first thing after doing the pasting was I do a horizontal tab, so all the content should be tabbed. Okay, and then we create a dictionary, and I change the variable name. And for this part, I did exactly the same thing, but I'm grabbing that column using the specific column name. And after that, after I have finished the entry count, I want to return instead of printing that. Okay, so if you want to do using the same data set and do the same language count again, you will get the same thing. However, well, if you have a similar task, now this can be handled with one line, one single function call, and say, well, if you want to do the count entry and then try to do the favorite count, and unfortunately we have all zeros, so not so interesting. Well, in next part, well, oh, by the way, you don't have that because this is a new exercise I just added, and I push you the old version instead of new version. But no worries, later I'm gonna push this version with the solutions to you guys too. Okay, so well, for this one, we have the President Trump Twitter, and we have a total of 400, if I remember correctly. Okay, and if we want to get the distinct value of President Trump's client, the client. So now we are using the first parameter as the President Trump's Twitter dataset. And then the second one, we specify the column, and the column should be the client. Okay, and this is what we find. It seemed that he, well, almost all the tweets were done on his iPhone, but there were two other clients. Well, they look suspicious. Okay, and then the next thing, well, for the tweet type, it could be retweet, reply, or tweet. Well, I believe the tweet means, well, that is his original content written by himself, or it could be a reply to other people's comments, or it's a retweet. So he sees something and then he retweets it. You see, well, he rarely reply to other people's comments, and well, I think that's reasonable. And the number of the retweets versus his original tweets written by himself were like 50-50. So this is President Trump style of doing his tweets. Okay, and then we want to move on, and we want to talk about a few built-in functions. You are going to use in the future. So the number one will be the zip, and we have already seen the zip. And the zip means if we have two sequences, and then we want to zip the index 0 on one sequence with the index 0 on the second sequence. So index 0 zip together, and index 1 zip together, index 2 zip together. Okay, so say if we have two lists, well, two ranges, and the first range is from 1 to 11, and 1 is included, and then the 11, the endpoint, is excluded. So we really have from 1 to 10, and 11 is excluded, and then we have the 0 to 20. Okay, and then we can zip them together. Well, and one of the problem, or one of the question you may ask is, well, if those sequences are not do not have the same length, what are we going to do? And the answer is, well, when we run out of the item on one sequence, so if we have 4 and then 3, and then one of the item, there's no way to zip them, and then as long as we run out of the item in one sequence, we are going to finish. Okay, and then we can zip them, and then after zipping, well, you will see we have tuples, right? So index 0 and index 0, we zip them together, and that is one tuple. And then index 1 and index 1, we zip them together, that's another tuple. Okay, say if we want to do this one, we want to zip the B with A, and now B is really large. However, when we run out of the items in the in the A, and then we are going to finish anyhow. Well, and another cool thing is, well, you can actually zip different data types together. Well, for this one, we have a tuple. And this one, the second one, is a list. And then the third one is a string. Well, they can be zipped together. Well, for a tuple, this one is the first item. And for a list, that's easy. The 2 is the first item. But what is the first item for the string? That is the first character. But anyhow, we can still zip them all together. Okay, and the next one is the enumeration. Well, when you are trying to enumerate a sequence, and then you are going to have the index and the corresponding item together into one tuple. Okay, say for this one, we are trying to enumerate the hello world, and hello world is a string. So what we are going to have is index 0, we have H. Index 1, we have E. Index 2, we have L. Well, we are trying to enumerate by putting together a index and the corresponding value. It can, for the value, it could be a character in the string, or it could be a value in a list, for example. And if you want to do, after you have to do the enumerate, and then, well, you can visit the pairs one by one, or the tuples one by one, because we have the index and we also have the value. Okay, and the next part, if you want to do a enumerate of a list, and then you can you have the index, and then you also have the value. And what I did here was, so originally I started from this one, right? And then I want to say, for the value, I'm using the values as the keys, and I'm using the index of those values in the list as the values in the dictionary. So this is to say, if you want to find the value 2, the value 2 is on index 0. Okay, it's on index value here, index 0 here. And for the value 7, it is on index 1. So if you want to find a 7, you can find it on index 1, etc. Okay, so this is a kind of a small cool thing if you want to do a lookup table or a hash table telling you whether you have those values in your list, and if there is such value, where can you find that. Okay, so anyhow, let's do a very quick sum up. And for functions, well, those are teeny tiny small pieces that if you know what to send in, what should be the return value, and then you should be able to use a function. So especially if you have a function created by other people, and then you only need to understand the input and output to use that function. However, if you want to create your own functions, and remember you want to have some flexibility, and you can use the arguments or the arguments or the parameters, and then you can also make use of the return values, so that your function can do one task, and this task can be used in different scenarios. And for example, for the count entries, so this is a example I love. So for this count entries, well, we are going to take two parameters, a data frame and then a column. As long as we have those two things, you can plug in any data frame and any column, and I will always reliably return you the count entries. So well, if you want to keep this function, and later if you have a cool data set, you want to do some exploratory data analysis, and sometimes you may find this function to be useful. Okay, and well, we also talk about two built-in functions. They're zip, so we are zipping several sequences together, and then when we run out of one of them, we are going to finish. And for the enumerate, we are going to enumerate, and for each of the item, that's going to be the index and then the corresponding value. So that's for enumerate, and we are going to see zip and enumerate later in this course too. Okay, so that's it for today. And oh, by the way, tomorrow, Friday, we don't have course, so but I will try to post the live 3.